will be Carolyn Robinson. She's the manager of communications and the executive office. The co-host of her today will be Melanie Woodbeck, the deputy registrar, our fearless leader, Fazal Khan, the registrar, and Sarah Butson, who is going to be our meeting facilitator. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning.
One of the presenters today is going to be an appointed member presenter, and that is Behzad Safati. He will be presenting in another couple of minutes after we get through the presentations of who's going to be here. I'll introduce myself, I guess, first of all, as a board member. I'm Brian Todd, the chair. Present today, we have Stephen Kinsella, the vice chair, public member. Dorina Reitz is supposed to be here, and I'm sure she'll be joining us very shortly. She is a optician member. Ingrid Koenig, who is an optician member. And welcome back again today, Jacqueline Kopp Rasmussen, who is a public member that we're glad to have back today. Other members that are on the council, or on the board, I should say, Diana Bristow, who is a public member. Omar Farouk, who is a public member. Samir Modira is an elected optician member. And yes, I don't think I remember you having any motions passed here yesterday, Samir, so we'll try and do that again today. Mike Smart, a veteran elected member, optician member. Neda Mohammed-Zada is an elected member, optician member. Peggy Judge, who is a new public member. Welcome, Peggy. Henry Wierzima. How's that, Henry? Is that better? He is a new public member. Welcome. And Murray Angus, the newest public member. Welcome again, Murray. We have some regrets. Amber Fournier, who is an elected member, is not going to be able to attend today, or neither will be Ed Vivros, who is another elected optician member, who will not be able to attend today. So we're big fans on YouTube, and apparently some of the attendees of the appointed members on the board today are watching are Daniela Showalter, Kevin Kluche from North Bay, Tanya Nahabin, Dennis O'Hagan, Margaret Osborne, and Derek Summers from Ottawa. Staff today that will be joining us, again, I mentioned Carolyn Robinson, Peggy Dreyer, who is the manager of quality assurance, Anna Jeremiah, who is the manager of registration, Daniel Jansen, who is the manager of professional conduct and ICRC complaints, Deirdre Brooks, manager of patient relations and governance, and the irreparable Amy Stein, who is our legal mind on the college. Welcome, everyone. Okay, so we're going to probably start with any announcements. Does anybody have any announcements to make at all before I begin? Nothing? Okay, I'm going to hand it back to Sarah then, Sarah, and you can start the ball rolling.
That's great. So before we lead into the next section, I just wanted to say a couple quick things. The first one is just kudos to everyone for the amazing participation yesterday. I was keeping track on my little list, and I think we heard from everyone yesterday. So amazing job. Hope to hear from you all again today. Second piece, just a quick reminder going into the meeting today around if you have a question or a comment during the discussion sections, to use the virtual hand. It's an easy way for us to see you. And then when we get to a motion, just to state your name, and you can throw your hand up too if you want. So we'll do that verbal name stating for the motions, and then the virtual hand for questions. Having said that, we'll get started with our first section. We are going to hear now from an update from the Patient Relations Committee, and I'm going to pass it over to our guest speaker, Behzad.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Now, the very first section, we have over here the Patients Relation Committee regarding to item 13.1, which is a sexual prevention harassment guideline. The Patients Relation Committee has a legislative mandate to develop measures for preventing and dealing with sexual abuse of patients. Now, the measures must include educational requirements for the opticians, guidelines for the conduct of opticians with their patients, training for the college staff, and finally, the provision of information for general public. In addition, the college is dedicated to upholding the best interest of patients in Ontario and endorses a zero tolerance policy toward any form of sexual abuse. The college regards any act of sexual abuse of patients as unacceptable, and such actions are subjected to investigation as professional misconduct. Now, however, sexual harassment of non-patients does not meet the definition of sexual abuse within the RHPA, but is nevertheless a form of professional misconduct and demonstrates an abuse of power and has the potential to negatively impact patients' care. Now, there were discussion in the committee regarding the consideration for this guideline. The very first one, we were considering about the 4 different, consideration. The very first one is staff employees that victimized in the workplace may be worried about nobody gonna believe them, or their employees could be retaliating against them. And so that's the reason many employees, they're worried about losing their jobs, or they may jeopardize their future career prospect, and so they're worried about reporting sexual harassment. Second item is the second consideration was the students are relying on their mentors and the senior registered opticians for for gaining their experience. They have to the registered opticians, senior registered opticians, they have to sign their logbook about their contact lenses for the eyeglasses in order for those guys to graduate and to be registered optician. And they might not want to, rock the boat and to jeopardize their internship, as well as, so that's the reason it's a difficult situation for them, and it's very uncomfortable to, they don't want to create any problem or to perceive as a troublemaker. So that's the reason, the second item, that they don't come forward. Students or interns and staffs are vulnerable in as a target of sexual harassment because of the power imbalance. In general, in the workplaces, those guys are in a lower section of basically the hierarchy. So victims also may be feeling that they feel invaded or shameful or fearful. And so plus the fact they don't know where to go and who to report to get some help. And finally, the last consideration was opticians and their employees, their employers. Maybe they're not understanding fully the professional obligations, and when it comes to the anti-sexual harassment policies in the workplaces, that this that could be alerting all the parties or their rights or the roles and the responsibilities that they have. Now, this guideline, if it's approved by the board, is going to be posted on the college's website. Now, we're opening the floor for the questions.
Great. So questions or comments from the board on the suggestions from the committee? Not seeing any hands raised.
Actually, I have a question, but I'm
Go
trying
ahead,
to get
Omar.
on. I'm trying to get on to the participants to ask a question, but anyway,
Oh.
somehow I have difficulties in the clicking there. But anyhow,
That's okay. Go ahead.
Thanks for facilitating me. In regards to the students, I understand and I appreciate point 2 and 3 in terms of the students having fear of coming forward. But having taken that into consideration, isn't it? It's a moral obligation upon everyone, whether you're students or not. When you see something of a sexual misconduct taking place, of a sexual nature happening, it's a moral obligation upon any individual as a conscientious person to come forward and report such an incident. There should be no question asked, regardless of the fear or the consequences which perhaps you could experience down the line. But that moral obligation and that sense of consciousness should always be present in you to come forward.
Okay. Behzad, I don't know if you wanted to comment.
Thank you very much, Omar.
That
was an excellent point. Now, you're absolutely right. This is a moral obligation for everybody, regardless of basically, what is optician or any co-workers, everybody in the workplace to come forward and report it. I 100% agree with you. However, there are situations that the registered optician, as you're aware, is a power imbalance. Now, the power imbalance, they're in a fear of basically, imagine in a work environment that there are 2 or 3 people working, usually one optician, and could be intern or student optician and receptionist. There is a power imbalance over there. They are worried. They're worried basically what's going to happen to them if they come forward, if they say something. They may lose their jobs. They may be repercussion. So that is the fear over there. However, if we post the guideline on our website, everybody knows exactly what's happening. And this is a moral obligation for everybody to come forward and to report, to know exactly who to report or where to go. And there is a place for seeking help. Then that fear may be diminished. So that's excellent point. Thank you very much for your comment.
Thank you, Behzad. And I see that Steve and then Brian also have their hands raised. Go ahead, Steve.
Thanks, Sarah. I think, yes, this is an excellent point to have this posted on the website, because the more people know about it. We've had sexual harassment guidelines and laws on the books for years, but yet even up to going into a couple of years ago, when the Ontario government, our government ministers were even accused of sexual harassment, even at the provincial level. So it's still people, we have the laws there, but still people continue to abuse them. And you just can't do that. So the more you get that information and drive it home and put that information out there, I think it's better.
Thanks, Steve. Brian, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to pick up with what Steve had said. He actually said pretty well what I was going to say. I think this is a really important subject. Transparency that it has been done in the past. And I think, Behzad, by this report, I compliment the Patient Relations Committee on doing a really good job on that, and having it posted, I think, is the way to go. It has to go that way, and there's no other choice.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Brian. Ingrid, and then Henry.
Sorry, just had to find the unmute button. Yeah, I'm in favor of this. I'd make the motion to post it.
Okay, great. Henry, something to add?
I just wanted to add, I think it's an excellent document.
Great. So further kudos to the committee. Any other comments? I'm sensing general agreement amongst the group. Are there other comments or questions for the committee or for the board? Okay, it doesn't look like it. What we'll do is do another consensus test. So a show of hands to move forward on this one. Seeing a unanimous show of hands. Thank you, everyone. Okay, I will pass it to Brian for a motion.
Thanks, Sarah. So I'll pick up on Ingrid as being the one to motion the motion, but call the motion, but I will read it off. That the board approve the sexual harassment prevention guidelines as recommended by the Patient Relations Committee. So Ingrid has moved it. I need a seconder.
Mike, second.
All right, there's a lot of hands up there. I was just looking at Henry, so I'll just take Henry. I'm sorry, guys. You'll all get a chance. All in favor?
And that's unanimous.
Unanimous.
Super. Okay, so we're going to move on now to 13.2, the Jurisprudence Rhpa module mandatory onboarding. Go ahead, Behzad.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Now, I would like to present the committee's idea that the RHPA module be mandatory part of training for the board if the board approves the recommendation and the directors and the committee member policy 4-27 will be updated. Now, Patients Relation Committee finalized a new jurisprudence chapter. The RHPA as a part of new module that is now part of the QA's self-directed CE program. The committee also recommended that the RHPA module become a mandatory part of the onboarding package for new board and appointed members to be completed before even their first meeting at the college. On May 27, 2020, the new chapter of the Jurisprudence Handbook, the Regulated Health Professional Act, which is RHPA, was reviewed and finalized by the Patients Relation Committee. This module is now part of the QS CE program. At its meeting on July 27, 2020, the board approved a bylaw change that has an additional requirement for the eligibility to run for board of directors election as candidates complete certain pro-election training module to ensure that they possess the knowledge to carry the fiduciary role as a director if elected. And for 2020 director of elections, candidates completed the RHPA chapter. Now, the committee's reasoning for recommending this to be a mandatory, there were a couple of reasoning behind that one. The very first one was the jurisprudence RHPA module provides an overview of the primary act that governs health regulatory colleges in Ontario. And the second one is by completing this module, directors and members will gain a better understanding of the CEO's purpose and the role of the board and committees, and better ensure that that they possess the basic knowledge necessary to carry their fiduciary role as a director of their board. Now, the board may also wish to consider the RHPA module to be completed every 3 years, just like requirement for the sexual abuse module. Now I'll be opening the floor for questions.
Great. Thank you, Behzad.
Thank you.
Questions or comments from the board around this recommendation? Okay, I'm seeing some hands. We'll go to Mike and then Murray.
Behzad, I just want to comment on the committee and the presentation you've made on both, which reflects the number of questions you're going to get. It was well done. So thank you. And then I'll let Murray go on.
Thank you, Mike.
Super. Thanks, Mike. Okay, Murray.
I fully support this proposal, but being a new member, I'm still confused with the titles of our membership. in the recommendation, you talk about board directors and appointed members. Now, I know that there are appointed members from the college, but there's also appointed members by the ministry or the federal government or the provincial government. And I'm just wondering if it should be detailed more clearly in the recommendation.
Okay, Behzad, did you want to?
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you for Murray. Thank you for the questions. Now, appointed members are, as indicated yesterday's meeting as well. Appointed members are the optician, the professional, members that are appointed by the board, and the ones that are appointed by the government, they're called public members. Now, that is the difference between them. Now, for the future, there is a possibility there may be appointed members that they're non-professional, non-opticians as well, as guided yesterday, and it was presented by Faisal. But all the public members are part of the board, and as well as elected members are member of the boards. So this is, it may create a little bit of confusion at the beginning, but that's the explanation.
Thanks, Behzad. And a suggestion from Ingrid here around a potential for a glossary. Ingrid, is there, are you thinking like a glossary within the orientation package, or where would you envision that glossary?
Yeah, either at the beginning or the end of the document, with a summary of the names and probably maybe some of the acronyms. I believe that exists somewhere already, but perhaps in a separate spot.
Sure, we could turn to the team. I don't know if Melanie or Faisal know, is there an existing glossary that would have this information?
Not necessarily a glossary, but there is a list of acronyms.
Right.
So perhaps we could define, like we were just discussing the difference between the memberships, appointed and public appointed, and anything else that may be ambiguous. Perhaps if the public members were to throw in their comments, we could correct it or add to it. But the document itself, I think, is very informative.
Yep. Okay. Great, thanks. Samir, Medad?
No, I actually, Patient Relations Committee actually did a fantastic job there. Definitely a great policy to endorse, I would say. As part of our yesterday's communication that to take on any role at the college, we have to complete some of the mandatory trainings, and this is one of that, and I fully support that.
Great, thanks, Samir. Jacqueline.
So to Murray's point, just around the appointed member definition, I do agree with him. I know when I started 3 years ago or so, and I knew that I was a public member, but I was an appointed public member. And when I went to the first meeting package, there was a download package for board members and a download package for appointed members. So I really like Ingrid's idea. And if we could just incorporate, as suggested, public member feedback, or we don't even have to, just if we can make that distinction of the two different types of appointed members, that would help, especially with, when you're attending your first meetings and the orientation around all of that. And just regarding this module, I think it's a really great idea that this module is taken once and every 3 years, because it's a really nice reminder of the purpose of the board, that the board is here for the protection of the public. And sometimes it's easy to forget that, but I think this is a really great, gentle reminder of what our roles and responsibilities are as they pertain to protecting the public. So great job.
Great. Thank you, Jacqueline. Mike, you wanted to add something?
I just wanted to say to Fazell, there's another topic for the earlier discussion we had, which was not on air, but I think that'll come up in your meeting when you have to try and come up with a glossary for the public member.
I'm seeing a thumbs up, so it looks like agreement. Peggy, I see you have your hand up.
With respect to the glossary, just one thought: when you're reading a document or looking at a document, for the first time the acronym is used, it is actually spelled out what it is. So RHPA, if that's what it, yeah, it's RHPA. I don't believe it actually says what RHPA is, and then they're having to cross-reference things, whereas if it was just the very first time or in the title, it's written out in full, and then thereafter in bracket the acronym, and then you use the acronym afterwards.
Within the document itself, Peggy, are you referring to, like the
Yes.
meeting package that you get?
Well, in this case, I just went and looked at sorry, the document that they've just we're talking about right now, and I don't believe it actually writes out what RHPA stand for. Maybe I missed it, but
Yeah, I can allow the group to comment. I don't know if Melanie or Fazal, maybe there's a way to highlight. I think within the purpose, it spells it out, but
Yeah,
well,
like I think format wise, what we'll make sure is that staff are aware not to start out of the gate with an acronym and to put the full name, and then the acronym can be used after in the document. We do have a resource with a list of acronyms, but I agree with Peggy that cross-referencing two documents simultaneously isn't easy. So I think we'll just be mindful when we're creating documents that we start with the full name.
That's great.
So I'm looking at it right now, you know, in table of contents, whatever, and it just says chapter 4 RHPA as it in its title. So it's right there, right from the beginning.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would be helpful to, at least in the title of it, like I say, and then you use the acronym, and it's kind of.
Yeah, I think we get too comfortable with our shop talk. And it's like, hey, don't you know, isn't your world revolve around the RHPA? So point well noted.
Yeah, that's a great point. So hearing some suggestions around a glossary, and then really kind of spelling out acronyms early on so that folks know exactly what it is that they're reading to prep for. Henry.
Just to add to that, what really would also be helpful is not only that you spell it out at the start, but when you've got a long drawn out document, to put it in again once in a while. So you don't have to go back to the front, figure out what was it again, especially when you're involved with a new organization. I mean, there's, you know, I've got 3 pages of acronyms here, and now you're just going to add another page by the time this document's done. So to throw it in once in a while in the document, I think would be really helpful.
That's a great idea.
Sorry to jump in. Fazal, I'm just wondering if there's a way with the IT that we could just click on the acronym and it would come up what it meant anytime in any document. I don't know if that's possible. I'm not a computer guy, but.
Oh, Fazal, you're muted.
Sorry. I'm not sure if that's some special magic with hyperlinking. So definitely I will speak to the team about how to make these documents more readable.
That's great. Good suggestions. Peggy, I'm seeing your hand as well.
I was just going, that's great, but for anybody who actually prints it, likes to read with paper, then it still needs to be written out.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe there's a way to kind of appeal to all of the different ways that people are reading through the documents for ease. Great suggestions. Any other questions or comments, even specific to the module occurring prior to the first meeting? Any other comments specifically with respect to the module. It sounds like there's an eagerness to have these types of learning opportunities. Okay, I'm seeing head nods. So why don't we go ahead and do a test for consensus on moving forward with the module as outlined. Very quick show of hands. I think I'm seeing all around. Super. Okay, so Brian, we will pass your way for a motion.
Thank you, Sarah. Before I speak to that motion, I just wanted to welcome Darina. Darina, you've just joined us or a little while back, so I just want to acknowledge your presence. Welcome.
Oh, super. Thank you, Brian.
Okay, so I'll call for the motion. The motion will read as such, that the board approve Chapter 4 of the RHPA, Jurisprudence. By the way, RHPA is Regulated Health Professions Act, module as part of the mandatory onboarding training requirements for new members, board directors, and appointed members to be completed before their first meeting at the college as recommended by the Patient Relations Committee. I need a mover.
I so move, Mike.
Okay, Mike, and
Second,
I think
Murray.
I saw Murray is the seconder. All in favor?
And
Looks
that's
unanimous.
unanimous.
Thank you.
Great. Oh, Fazal?
Sorry, I just unmuted myself. I just want to double check. I think the module is accredited. I'm just going to check with. It is accredited. Okay.
Yes.
So, I think that's also a nice bonus for the professional members when they're onboarding, that they're able to count it towards their continuing education growth. So I think that's another positive to this. I think it's good that everybody's well versed with it. So kudos for passing it.
That's great. Thanks, Fazal. Okay, so we're going to move on to 13.3, the college organization values, again with Behzad. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I'll give you a little bit of background about the organizational value. Now, an organization's core value supports its vision and mission, shape its culture, and educate stakeholders about the organization's identity and beliefs. The College of Opticians' core values were articulated in 2015 and reaffirmed at the board's strategic planning session in December 2019. And currently there are four core values: transparency, accountability, integrity, and efficiency. Now, transparency, access to information that is not confidential; accountability, accepting responsibility for decisions and actions; integrity, acting with conscience, putting aside self-interest and making clear decisions that are aligned with our mandate; efficiency, performing properly without wasting resources. Now, as you are aware, during the last year, the board of directors and appointed members have been participating in a DEI training. Now, DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, at the board meeting on July 27, 2020, each board member was asked to review the output of the training session and weighing in on the importance of the DEI values. The board also recommended the elimination of the value efficiency from the college's core value. The board asked the Patient Relation Committee with reviewing and refreshing the college's core organizational value and creating a new DEI value statements. And the Patient Relation Committee came up with the 6 new college core value that is showing in Appendix B, and all the changes are highlighted with the green. Now, just briefly mentioning that after the discussion, committee members decided that to incorporate the efficiency into the accountability instead of completely removing it. Now, there are 6 core values. The first one is transparency, exactly the same as before, access to information, as I mentioned, it was amalgamated with the efficiency, acting responsibly and efficiently in all decisions and actions. Number 3, integrity, acting with the conscience, putting aside self-interest and making clear decisions that are aligned with our mandate. The number 4, now the DEIs, coming in, equity, promoting equitable access and opportunity to all decisions, policies, and services. Number 5 is respect, demonstrating thought and compassion in all interactions with patients, registrants, colleagues, and stakeholders. And finally, number 6 is diversity, celebrating the diversity of ideas and people. Now, the inclusion of DEI values as a part of the college's core value demonstrates the significance of these values in the college's work and carrying out its mandate. Now I'm opening the floor for the questions.
Okay, initial reactions, comments, reflections on the values? Steve, I see your hand raised.
Thanks, Sarah. I think it's imperative, and the public almost demands it, that we have all of these statements in front of you and carry them out, because it goes beyond expectation in today's society that, if anything, these are the basics that you should be doing. And I think we need, as an organization, to show the public, the members, everybody out there, that this is what we're all about and continue to be about.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. Other reflections?
It's Omar.
Mm-hmm.
Within all these wonderful and great act of integrity there, where does trust fits in? I haven't seen any specific mention of trust, but I'm sure it has to be incorporated, perhaps silently, somewhere in between. Can someone relate something in reference to that?
Yeah, Behzad, I don't know if you want to respond if that came up in the committee discussions.
Because trust is an integral part from the public perspective, and if it's not clear in the eyes of the public, then perhaps it can be viewed as something as important as that is missing.
Sure. Now, thank you very much, Omar. Was an excellent point. This is, yes, it did come in a, discussion, and it was part of the, if you consider as accountability and integrity, in between, if there is no accountability, there is no trust. And if there is no integrity over there, again, there is no trust. So trust are the whole, values over here. We're trying to gain the public trust. So the general public trust is when you running the everything as a part of your core value with the accountability, efficiency, and to be responsible, you gaining people's trust. When you are acting with the integrity, you are automatically gaining the trust. So it's kind of basically, putting that one over there. I don't mind at all. If you wish, we could, put him over there as, but this is the core value. The bottom line is gaining trust. If people know that we're acting everything with accountable and, and we are with the integrity, automatically we're gaining the trust.
Thanks, Beza. So what I'm hearing, if I'm hearing you correctly, is that trust is sort of an outcome of us fulfilling these and living out these values. Samir, something to add?
So my understanding, we did talk about that in a meeting. Trust is basically a foundation of a relationship. And the same thing goes with our transparency as well. The transparency basically is a trust of a stakeholder, which is employees, any partners, any members basically, or registrant of the college. So that's one of the reasons why we eliminated trust and we kind of incorporated that in transparency.
Great, thanks for that context.
Thank you, Simi.
Other thoughts, reflections? Is everything captured that should be captured? Is anything missing? Fazal? Oh, and you're just muted.
Yeah, I'll maybe wait till Netta has her comment and then I'll go
Oh,
after.
yes, absolutely. Go ahead, Netta.
Thank you. In the meeting we actually went through a evaluation that it was done with all the members, that we went through the highest basically marking of each of these values, and then we chose out of the, let me take a look here, we had about 2, 4, we had 5 that we added 3 to our current values. I just want to mention this, that the evaluation went to the whole council member, the board of directors, and it had numbers that they put the value on each of these categories, and we basically chose out of those 5 to add these 3 to our current values. Thank you.
Thanks, Netta. That's really good additional context, and I believe that's that ranking was within Appendix A, just if folks want to reference that. Thanks for that, Netta. Fazal?
Yeah, I like how efficiency was rolled into accountability to kind of lean it out a little bit, and I think we're living efficiently. Like that's a core principle that the college has been running by. I think these Zoom meetings speak to it as well, the efficiency that we've embraced. So I think it's good that it's now rolled into accountability. I love that diversity and equity now show as part of our core values, and I think is in alignment with our diversity, equity, and inclusion training. The one thing, and I think this this is something that has been on my mind, is I'm just thinking, for instance, September 30th marked Orange Shirt Day, with the marking the plight of victims of the Canadian Indian residential school system, and that speaks to systemic discrimination. And one thing that I'm wondering is, in our equity statement, should we not mention explicitly discrimination? Because I think it may be understood that that's what we're going for, but I'm concerned that we're not being explicit about it.
Okay, excellent question, Fazal. I wonder, it'd be great to hear other members' thoughts on whether we should be explicitly including discrimination within the values. Are there thoughts from individuals?
Diana's got her hand up.
Oh, okay. Diana?
I like that idea. I think it's great to explicitly state something about discrimination, and I'm very impressed with the college and being proactive and the diversity training. I think the college is really leading what everyone should be doing in terms of protecting the public's interest. So I really like that point.
Thanks, Diana. I see Peggy and then Ingrid.
I was just going to say, along those same lines that you're talking about discrimination, also culture and religious sensitivity. And I think we've touched on some of that with people, whether they're comfortable having their faces touched and with trying on glasses and things like that. But there are many, many layers to what somebody's culture is that affect how they're perceived and how they prefer to be dealt with.
Thanks, Peggy. That's a great example. Ingrid.
Yeah, I believe the language is in the document before that, Appendix A, and perhaps it was just summarized too briefly in the Appendix B. Is that what it is? Yes. Where we say the elimination of discrimination in all forms under equity. I also like in inclusion, regardless of race, abilities, age, background, or other unique attributes. It just seems maybe that in Appendix B, it could be expanded to really emphasize those properties from the previous document.
Thanks, Ingrid. So it sounds like you are in agreement with the potential to add discrimination and pointing out that we may actually have some of that language at our fingertips already through Appendix A.
Yes.
Mike and then Omar.
I believe I'm in agreement with everybody. Zell, that's a great point. And I'm just wondering if we should send it back to committee or should we be actually making the changes here? I think the committee's done a great job. So if we turn it back to them, I'm sure they're going to consolidate our comments here and make those changes. So that would be my recommendation.
Thanks, Mike. Fazal, did you want to respond to that? Oh, and you're just muted.
Gotta get better at this. You know, I just think like there's so much work done. I think we're at the finish line and maybe a minor edit maybe to bring it to cross the finish line. You know, I know what Ingrid's saying is that a lot of that stuff is expanded upon in the other document. One thing that I think about in a practical sense is these values. We've started using them actually as you know, things that we actually put on our walls and like the banner that's behind Brian right now has got the old values, but in our public facing materials, and so I think while this is condensed, I think if we can capture it there, it's going to be in the forefront of what we put out as our public persona, because I know we're exercising it in the background. So I was just going to suggest that, you know, on the equity line, it says promoting equitable access and opportunity, perhaps comma, free of discrimination in all decisions, policies, and services. So just sort of inserting free of discrimination in that line.
Great, thanks for that suggested wording, Fazal. Maybe we can get folks' reactions to that wording. Ingrid, I saw your hand up.
I like it.
Okay, got one thumbs up. Brian, Mike, and Omar.
Ditto with what Ingrid said. I think that's an excellent line, Fazal, to insert on there. I think it sums it all up without having to reshape the whole document. It's just a minor tweaking, but it says a lot.
Great, thanks, Brian. Mike, and then Omar.
I was just giving the 5 an approval. Thumbs up.
You're just going ahead and voting. Okay, super. Omar.
You know what? I was extremely happy when Fazal brought the systematic racism to light. It's something that should be noted because it is in existence in every facet in society, in our community, and we cannot deny that. We cannot deny that. And to address it at this level, it is commendable, and it just ensuring safe quality care as required from the college.
Great, thanks, Omar. Peggy.
Me again. Is there a way to put in something about dealing with people with individuals with sensitivity, or is it built in there in different language already?
And did you want to expand on when you say individuals?
I'm trying to not use a lot of words, but back to that point of sensitivity to culture, background, et cetera, that every individual has their own unique. But I'm not the wordsmith. But we're trying to use just a few words to capture that. Maybe discrimination doesn't capture all of those nuances. We always just think of discrimination as just a racial or gender discrimination, and there are many more layers to it than that.
I've heard it referred to in other instances as creating a culturally safe environment, which is, some potential wording that might reflect that the recognition of different cultures.
That's broader.
Thoughts or comments on that? Diana, I see your hand raised.
Could you put the wording back up on the screen? And
I
think it would be great if we could approve something today, because it's just so important. I really think we need to have something to move forward with.
Absolutely. Would it be helpful, Diana, if we, and I don't know if this is actually possible given that it's in a PDF, but I was just thinking kind of actually rewording that, actually typing out the reworded version for folks to see. Melanie, I don't know if that's possible, but.
Yeah, I can put something together quickly.
Okay. Just because it is sometimes easier to be able to see that. Other thoughts or comments while Melanie is putting that together, maybe from someone that we haven't necessarily heard from yet? It'd be great to kind of hear from everyone, given that this was kind of formed by everyone. Murray.
Thank you. It was mentioned earlier in the dialogue that trust wasn't specific in the core values, and one of the comments was that trust is the foundation of any relationship. I'm just wondering if a preamble to the core values could be something along that nature, that we believe that trust is the foundation of a relationship, and the relationships are strengthened through our core values, and then list the core values.
Okay, thank you, Murray. So a suggestion of a potential sort of preamble that sort of outlines the goals that the values help us to achieve.
So can you see my screen now?
We can, thank you, Melanie.
Okay.
It might need to be, if you could probably increase, yeah, that's great. Okay, so you've got highlighted here, so equity, promoting equitable access and opportunity, free of discrimination in all decisions, policies, and services. And so the yellow part is the addition there. Just a second to kind of read through that. Reactions to that wording, are we still missing pieces? Maybe Peggy, oh, I see your hand up. I was going to ask you, so there you go.
I think what I was concerned about, now that I see it in front of me, is really taken into account with demonstrating thought and compassion in all interactions with everyone. If you're doing that, then you're taking into account what they're about as an individual, with all of those things that I'm talking about that they bring with them.
Perfect. So that's captured in that respect value around demonstrating.
It is.
Great. Other thoughts, reflections? Have we captured it here? I'm seeing some nods. Jacqueline.
Get my cursor over there. Yeah, I think we spent, I think it was a half day or a full day, and we really, really pondered all of these values and tried to be inclusive of how important all of they are within the code and within our actions at the college. And I think adding discrimination helps, especially in light of September 30th. And I know I've been doing a lot of reading, and I think we all as a country have a lot of work to do, particularly around Indigenous, just some of the systemic racism. So that I think that's important to have in there. I do like Murray's suggestion of having sort of a preamble without, redoing. And I mean, because we did vote and rank and spend a lot of time on these different values. So without changing those or moving those around too much, if a preamble helps to show that we are incorporating trust into everything that we do, it's not a bad thing.
Great, thank you. Brian?
Yeah, I guess my question would be directed more to Omar about the wording and that such. Omar, does this address the aspect of the word trust, or are you feeling strongly enough that the actual word should be inserted somewhere in there? I don't want to belabor this because we don't want to be spending all morning on this, but it's important to flush it out with what your feelings are on it too.
Thanks, Brian, for giving me the opportunity once again. This came out of what was presented earlier, with students having fear of coming forward to report, something that they have seen, which was healthy, a sexual misconduct issue. If a person doesn't come forward in a moral way and report these things, how can such an individual or professional be trusted? Where is the integrity aspect of it? So in order to address this to add clarity to it, I would agree with the suggestion just before to have a somewhat preamble, a condensed preamble statement or something of the sort, just to reinforce the presence of trust.
Thanks, Omar. And Peggy, I see your hand up as well. A couple comments coming into the chat box as well, which is great. Diana actually offering up a potential preamble. Our 2020 mandate is created with a goal of creating a safe culture and relationships built on trust. And then Samir noting that the word trust could be added to the respect value, with demonstrating trust, thought, and compassion in all of our interactions with patients, registrants, colleagues, and stakeholders. Peggy, maybe we'll go to your question first and then maybe get some thoughts from the group around the addition of some of that wording.
So I just put it in the chat as well. When we talk about discrimination, and what some of that means is that people are coming with their predisposed biases. So should we be putting in perhaps free of discrimination and bias? When a patient walks in, there isn't an assumption about what they're about.
Okay, suggestion to include the word bias there. Let's start maybe with the preamble. Are there reactions from folks around the suggested preamble? Is that an easy kind of quick short line? I'm seeing some thumbs up. Steve, you've raised your hand. Did you want to?
Yeah, I like Diana's comments that she put in there. I think that really covers basically what everyone's talking about. And it's just, it's your first statement out, it addresses it, and then you move on to your other values.
Okay. Other reactions from the group? Seeing some nods. Do we need, the next question that I guess I'd ask is, do we, if we have it in the preamble, then do we want to also include it within the respect value as was suggested in the chat? maybe get some reactions around including that wording within the respect value. Seeing Murray's hand.
I think if we have it in the preamble, it's not necessary to add it to the specific core values.
Okay, other folks?
And I absolutely favor the preamble. I think it's a great idea.
Thanks, Murray. Other thoughts and reactions on including trust within the respect value? Okay, not hearing any. Samir, thoughts or comments after having seen it included in the preamble?
I'm all okay with that. That's fine.
Okay. Ingrid?
I'm just curious as to perhaps why there isn't a preamble to the document. Is that just because it's not complete, or I don't know? Was it not intended to have a preamble, I guess? How do we present this document? Where does it go? I know it may go on our wall, but is there our mission and then our values? It might be nice.
Yeah, great question, Ingrid. I'm seeing Fazal is ready to answer.
I think, with typical strategic planning, there's always this vision and values, vision, mission, and values statement, and they're always just statements and they're just out there. So I think the idea of a preamble is a great idea to capture, what we're trying to get at with these three components, because it's not just our values, it's also our vision and our mission. So a preamble to all three of those things, I think, would be a good addition.
Great. Okay, Brian.
Yeah, just to pick up on the preamble aspect, again, for the sake of time, instead of all of us trying to wordsmith this, could we not perhaps assign the preamble back to the committee, but finalize the values of what we're going to be voting on today so that we can move forward?
It's a good question, Brian.
Sarah, can I just pop in?
Yes.
Yeah, so with respect to the preamble, my one recommendation would be to make it a little more general. Maybe not put in 2020 because this will be in place for years to come until it's changed by the board. So just taking out the year and making it a little more generic.
Okay. It's a good suggestion, Melanie. In terms of taking it, do we need to take it back, as Brian suggested, to come up with some wording to bring back to the group, or what's the kind of suggested approach forward in terms of the addition of the preamble? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm in agreement with Brian's suggestion that we take it back to the committee and let them, word it in a very comprehensive way to reflect what we're talking about.
Okay. Okay, Steve, you have your hand raised, and then Omar, and then we'll look to see if we can come to some agreement on process as well as values just before break. Steve?
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, I'm in agreement with what Melanie said. Just take out the year, and I think that addresses the issue without having to send it back to a committee to spend time on it again, when we can put the whole thing to bed right today.
Okay, so suggestion that we may already have the wording and might not have to bring it back. Omar, another comment?
No, sorry.
Okay.
I'm fine.
I don't want to have overlooked Peggy's suggestion. Can I get some feedback on the inclusion of the word free of bias? Thoughts from folks there on adding that to the equity free of discrimination and free of bias.
Peggy, explain the difference between free of discrimination and free of bias.
There may not really be. We hear that word discrimination a lot, and I guess it's like it's an action, whereas bias is your opinion and your view of what you're expecting. It was just something that I was thinking about, of if you go back in history and how we would look at people and you just, because they're such and such, you assume, and that's what we don't want to be doing, and it's all part of the discrimination. So my thought was just that it maybe brought it to the forefront a bit, to think about what's your attitude when you're greeted with somebody.
Okay. Thoughts or reflections on that? Should we add that language in? Is it captured with what we have?
I think.
Oh, sorry, Mike. I see your name here, or your hand.
I'm just wondering if could we just not add the word, Melanie, while you're there, free of bias discrimination, and then on the top get rid of our 2020 mandate is creating a goal, just creating a safe culture and relationship, building trust, and make it. And I think that answers everybody's questions. So again, those were my suggestions. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I'm seeing some head nods. I have another comment here from Diana on the transparency value. Comment, in addition to access to information, to include something along the lines of clearly defined processes. Registration is not arbitrary. It is built on a set of processes and procedures which are clearly outlined and equitable for all. Diana, yeah, go ahead.
So just to clarify what I'm saying there, on transparency, it's one thing to say you have access to information which is not confidential, but in terms of transparency, I think it also means that the college is very clear and transparent in their processes. Everyone's treated equally. It's not, one person gets treated one way and someone, so I think there could be a little bit of wording in there that describes that it's not just you can get information if you come and ask for it, but we're transparent and forthcoming.
Okay. Melanie, I see your hand up. Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, this is seeming to me to be less of a preamble and more of the addition of another value, like either trust, or could we roll that in transparency? I would just point out that as part of the strategic plan, one of your goals is to enhance the college's effectiveness and trustworthiness through improved stakeholder awareness and engagement. So it does align with your strategic plan. And some of the words you used around defining that goal were establishing collaborative relationships with stakeholders that demonstrate effectiveness and trustworthiness.
Thanks for that, Melanie. So the potential that what folks are hoping to get from the preamble may actually be already suggested within the goal. Diana?
Just a sort of an overall comment. I realize we're putting this in place, but I know that some institutions will have like this public facing outline, but they'll also have like a 10-page booklet with a glossary of terms, discrimination and what that means to us. And it details it out in terms of, race, sexual orientation, gender identity. So it details it much more. But obviously you're not going to go post that on a wall or a website. I'm just wondering if it makes sense. I think that this is actually pretty encompassing and great wording, but I think we could also have something that's very detailed in behind that. for reference.
Okay, great suggestion. So potentially adding to that glossary that we've been speaking of, but to ensure that some of these other key terms are further detailed out. Ingrid, I saw your hand up. Did you have a comment that you wanted to add, or you took it down?
Yeah, I'm just thinking we're getting very into the wording of this. Perhaps we should send it back to the committee and look at it again instead of rushing it through. But
are there, so maybe this is a good point to kind of pause here. Are we, I guess the question is, are we close enough on the values where we may need to take a preamble back, or we still need to consider some elements of the values? Brian, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to repeat my suggestion about 10, 15 minutes ago. We can wordsmith this to death, and it's a very important subject. I am trying to keep us online with our timing, and we're well behind right now. If we can't come up with some exact wording quickly, I think the preamble should go back to committee. We can make the motion on the existing document we have in front of us right now, with instructions to the Patient Relations Committee to come up with a proper wording that we can all agree on at a later time.
Okay, so why don't we start there with a consensus. I'm seeing just another comment within the chat to add some of the transparency language, the potential to approve it with the expectation that the committee would come back with a more detailed revised version. So, and Brian, you're saying that that's a possibility for us to do.
Yeah, that's a suggestion that I made a while back, and I think we're going through a lot of exercise here, which is important. But I think the committee could come up with some wording that we'd all be happy with.
Okay, so why don't we use that as the consensus building question? A show of hands for folks who feel comfortable with it as is, but with the expectation that it will be further detailed and revised by the committee. Can I see a show of hands for that? And the question is kind of nicely worded within the chat as well for reference. Okay, Henry, let's see here from folks. That looks like consensus across. Okay, so with that, Brian, do you feel like you can move forward with that motion, or?
Yeah, I think we can call for that motion that's on the table at the moment, as I said, with the expectation that the committee will come up with a preamble that will be and bring it back to us. That's going to be acceptable to the council, to the board.
Perfect.
Okay, I'll call for that motion then. That the board approve the new college organizational values as recommended by the Patient Relations Committee. Should the board approve this recommendation, the organization shared values policy 4-02 would be updated. So I need a mover. Omar. Seconder is Henry. All in favor?
That looks like
unanimous.
Unanimous.
Thank you.
Super. Great. Thank you all. And thanks for that very important conversation. So we're going to take a break. We're going to come back in 15 minutes. So just kind of before 11. Same rules as always. Try to mute your line, shut off your video. We'll have the timer going here, and we will see you shortly.
And Fazal, I'm sorry that I brought up the element of trust to as a can of worm to delay the schedule of the.
No, not at all. Like, you know, this is what the board's eyes are for, is looking at something. The committee does all the heavy lifting and scanning and all this stuff, but it's the last set of eyes before being approved.
Right. Yeah.
So totally good to make sure we don't miss anything.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We count on things being said by public members, Omar, so take it away anytime.
Well, there you go, Brian. Yeah, you're a good man.
Some would dispute that.
Okay, so that's time. Welcome back, everyone. It looks like we have most folks back on the line. A couple folks still out. As Brian noted, we're just a couple minutes behind on schedule, but I think we shouldn't have any problem catching up. Just see if we've got, looks like we've got everyone now. Just waiting on Mike, it looks like. Do we want to move forward?
Yeah, I think we probably should. I think these next items won't take too long, but they're not earth-shattering, but they are important at least to discuss. But I think Mike can catch up when he joins us.
Super. Okay, so we'll move along to 14.0, which is the Public Appointee Committee recommendations. And I'll invite Brian.
Thank you, Sarah. So this is I'll call it a gap filler. The Executive Committee has a recommendation before you to appoint Murray to a few slots that potentially could become open pending on the reappointment of our present public members. So as it stands right now, we haven't heard anything from the appointment office concerning Jacqueline. And I believe that we have received information, though, the Diana reappointment is in progress. So to that end, the Executive Committee is trying to make sure that each committee is constituted just as a stopgap measure. So if in the event Jacqueline is reappointed, we will still have a number or the correct number of public members on those particular committees. But if not, the committee can at least continue to function as constituted. So the recommendation here again, and we'll need a motion on it, is that the board approve the recommendation from the Executive Committee to put Murray into the particular spots that have been designated for. So we need some discussion and a motion and a motion on it too. So I'll hand it back to you, Sarah.
Perfect. Thanks, Brian. Any questions from folks? Omar, I saw your hand up.
No, I was going to say that I would move the motion because it's an excellent recommendation. Yeah.
Okay, super. Thanks, Omar. We'll note that. Ingrid, I see your hand up.
Just now looking at the committee slate, I noticed that the Public Relations Committee, without Jack there, has 2 public members. That is quorum, but perhaps another public member might benefit them. Because the committee slate we have in front of us is from July 27th. And since then, Jack Swicker has left.
Brian, I don't know if you wanted to.
Yeah, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Ingrid, though, even without Jack there, the committee is still constituted, is it not, with the 2 public members that are on there now?
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the, I don't know, I'm not on public relations. I'm just guessing that, you know, if they have work to do and getting people together sometimes is hard, maybe with 1 extra public member there, that would be a benefit. Just a comment.
I invite other comments on that. That wasn't discussed, I don't believe, at executive to do so. I guess perhaps a member of the Public Relations Committee could comment on that, on whether or not they feel that they would need another member added to that particular committee at this time.
Do we have a member that would like to comment?
I think that they've done most of the heavy lifting right now. We're only talking 2 months or so left.
Yeah, it's just an observation. Sorry, like really,
Yep.
that's it.
Samira, I do see your hand up. Go ahead.
Sorry about that. So yeah, I support thoughts both ways. As part of a patient relation committee member, we are doing very well, but I also think odd scenarios like what Ingrid mentioned, if we for some time it happens, like everyone is not in the same schedule or so if that's the case, then definitely we can definitely accommodate if that everyone feels comfortable there.
I think the question should be asked, though, of Murray himself, because if we're talking about adding Murray to another committee, we don't want to overwhelm him. So again, it's hard to decide. I just don't know whether there's enough need for it right now, but that's going to be up to the council or the board to decide that. Murray, how do you feel about being assigned another committee?
It's very difficult for me to respond to that, Brian, because I don't know the workload of these committees. 2 committees seem okay. 3 might be a bit much, but I'm willing to give it a try.
Samira, I saw your hand, but we'll just maybe flip to Melanie first. Go ahead, Melanie.
Yeah, I just given our conversation just 15 minutes ago. The committee is going to be looking at values, and we had quite a fulsome discussion on it just now. So if there's a public member who's interested in that topic and working on that, that's going to be hopefully considered. There's only a couple months left in the year, so there'll probably just be 1 more meeting, if that helps.
Oh, so that this appointment is just for the remainder of this year?
That's right.
Is that for all 3 appointments?
That's right.
Okay, then I'm okay with it.
Okay. Thanks, Melanie. That's some great context. Samir, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, it was actually Melanie's right on. I was gonna say exactly the same thing, that we're just a reminder of a sigh of 2 months to the end of the year, 2-3 months, and we'll have 1 more meeting scheduled in November. So yeah, it should be okay.
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 So Sarah, sorry, I'll just add patient relations to the motion then, if that
Perfect.
would be okay, and then we can go forward. You want to go for a
That was going to be my suggestion. Yeah, so let's go ahead and do a show of hands for then Murray's name to be added to the 3 committees. It would be the ICRC, the registration, and the patient relations. Let's see, show of hands. Murray, I'll get your hand up there for sure in the consensus if I can. Okay, that looks good. So we'll go ahead, Brian, then with a motion.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, the motion will read then to appoint Murray Angus to the ICRC, the Registration Committee, and the Patient Relations Committee. I need a mover and a shaker. I see Omer's hand up.
Samir.
Samir is second. Attaboy, Samir, you finally got one in there. All in favor?
That looks unanimous.
Beautiful.
Super.
I guess I abstain, do I? Do I abstain?
I think you can vote on that, can't you?
Yeah, I don't see
Murray,
any reason why you can't.
It's up to you.
I'll vote then.
There we go. Super. Okay, so Brian, we're going to stay with you and talk about the December board meeting.
Yes, thank you very, very much. Okay, so there's a bit of information in front of you. The board, we agonized over what we were going to do. I know Fazell and I and Melanie, we had a lot of meetings on, and the Fazell and his team did a lot of work, as you can see in the package, about different scenarios as far as how future meetings will take place. There was a poll sent out to council members. There wasn't a total response from everybody, but bear in mind that that particular poll, if I remember my dates right, where it was sent out around the first 10 days of August, August 12th, if I'm not mistaken. At that time, the world was a little bit of a different place than it is right now. So there was some talk about having a hybrid meeting. In other words, individuals that wanted to attend could attend up to a certain point because there was a certain capacity that the boardroom could take. Since then, there's been a lot of changes. So the pandemic is not left us. In fact, it's increasing. So the outlook of this is not favorable to having any in-person meetings at all. It was going to be quite a task for the staff to try and put on a meeting in such a manner, being at a hybrid meeting. And I think that look, this is an individual decision of how people feel about the comfort level of whether they wish to attend a meeting or not. It's certainly up to that individual. But I think that circumstances have now pushed most people that, including myself, by the way, that were possibly interested in attending in person to a different point of view. And I think that the recommendation, at least that we have before us, is that we will continue to have virtual meetings. So we're trying to invoke some discussion because everyone should have an opinion on this, because this is very important. But the recommendation, again, for you is to continue with a Zoom or virtual meeting aspect like we have in front of us right now. So I certainly would invite some comments from the board on this subject.
Questions or comments before we move to a motion? I see Murray, Henry, and then Mike. Go ahead, Murray.
Thank you. Well, as the newest member, I would very much welcome an in-person opportunity to meet my colleagues, but recognizing the difficulties in doing that, particularly those of us that have to travel a great deal of distance to the Toronto location, I would be in favor of postponing in-person meetings until at least next year.
Perfect. Thanks, Murray. Henry?
Ditto.
Nice and concise, Henry. Mike?
Ditto, ditto.
Any other comments or questions on this one from the group?
I see Peggy's hand up.
Peggy, did you have a, oh, I'm seeing, is that a ditto ditto, Peggy? I'm seeing a nod, okay. Diana, were you saying something there?
Ditto.
Okay, that might signal a point to move to consensus. Maybe we should rethink how we do our consensus and move to dittos. Show of hands for moving forward with this suggestion. Okay, that looks good all around. So I'll let you go ahead and do that motion, Brian.
Thanks very much, Sarah. So the motion simply will read to approve a virtual format for the December board meeting. I need a mover.
Jacqueline.
Henry's hand up, and I heard Jacqueline. So 1 and 2, all in favor?
And that's unanimous.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Super. So we'll move forward to 16.1 and hear the strategic plan monitoring report. Go ahead, Fazell.
Okay. So in front of you, 16.1 and 16.2 are sort of the new formats for the administration to report out to the board as to our activities and how we're attempting to fulfill the strategic plan that's been set up by the board. And so in your notes, I'm just going to pull up my copy. You'll have our strategic plan, and outlined in it are, I believe, 3 major goals. And we had done the strategic plan back in 2019 for the years 2020 to 2022. And what we've done is the board is the one who's put together the strategic plan, figured out the strategies, and then the administration came back with the board came up with key performance indicators, and then the administration came back with this table and had it approved by the board, and then we've been filling it in along the way. So in it, you'll see some pictorials in the achieved column, whether it's been achieved or not yet, or if we're on our way, that type of thing. So there's actually a legend that shows achieved positive trend or not yet achieved, shown with an X, or not applicable. Because we've just started these metrics, sometimes we don't have baseline numbers yet. So I'm hoping that everyone's had a chance to read it. It's interesting, COVID's struck us all so hard, but at the same time, it's actually created an opportunity for us to actually improve our engagement with registrants. We've actually had a really huge uptake in the number of followers on social media, and the percentage of people that are actually opening our documents and responding to our surveys. So typically we have some pretty dismal results, but lately we have been doing very well with our open rates, our click-through rates, and the number of registrants engaging. So in strategy 1, updating the standards of practice, for instance, key performance indicators about the number of opticians who indicate that they know about and have adopted the standards of practice. We had set a target, for instance, of 60% of optician respondents. You'll see in the evidence that we've actually had a 96% response rate from our registrants. So there's been some really good numbers, and I think a lot of it is related to the fact that there's been so much going on because of the pandemic, that opticians have really been turning to the standards of practice. I think the board updating the standards of practice last fall was very timely because we grappled with remote services, which is key performance indicator number 2. And so the nice thing is the board had built that into the new standards of practice, and that was something we really promoted during the pandemic to reduce the amount of face-to-face service provision and move to remote service. So we had put on, for instance, some webinars and things like that to launch the return to practice guidelines, which were really well attended. I'm just trying to go through some of the numbers here. And and the other thing is that in order to improve the uptake, we also translated the guidelines to French. So we just announced that in September and distributed that. If you're looking at other metrics such as page views, where we had set a target for about 2,000 page views, which would be about, hoping that about 2/3 of our base, we have about 3,000 registrants, so we're hoping about 2,000, we did get about 2,000 views. At the time of this publishing, we had about 1,053 views with it sort of on the uptake. So I think we're trending well. Things like the percentage of patients who are using telepractice, these are things that we're going to have to commission some public polling and establish some baselines for these measurements and then come back to them. So what we have been able to monitor, we have put out in the document. What we need to establish baselines, we have also put in the documents. Moving to the quality assurance program, we talked about, for instance, we launched a new category, the professional growth category, and we had committed to developing 4 hours of continuing education. Thus far, we've actually, I think, met that in a good way. Modules, we've got 3. Presentations, we've got 3.5 credits. So instead of 4 hours, we've got about 6.5 out there. And again, COVID prompted a lot more presentations in the last couple of months. So we've created more content. There was content even created regarding professional judgment. So we're definitely ahead of our goals on that one. We've got a target of about 1,500 hours that we're hoping are consumed, that we produce, that are consumed by the registrants. We're not going to know till after December when everybody logs their CE what that one is. So we'll report back to you on that. Developing practice resources relating to new technologies. Got a big check mark there. We've got the remote practice standard number 7 that we had developed. We've definitely promoted that a lot. So I don't want to sort of belabor it too much, but the document in front of you has basically got all our strategic plans, the KPIs that we have set for this year, the KPIs that we're going to be setting next year. And in the far right column are sort of the actions and achievements that support those initiatives. So I just wanted to find out if you had any questions about it.
Any feedback, comments on the report? Go ahead, Steve.
Thanks, Sarah. Zell, I just wanted to commend your staff for sending out the updates during the COVID process as to telling as a non-optician, they were precise, exact detail about what I can't and couldn't do. They were clear instructions, right down to the point of, people asking, where can I buy PPE and things like that in the instructions you give. And I just think they were excellent, just excellent to follow through. And the other thing I must commend staff on and yourself for allowing the registrants to get extra CE hours by viewing different things and taking to get those hours in, especially during COVID times when they can breeze up on them and get them all completed so that when they go on to fill out their quality assurance requirements, that they can complete it. So I just think staff has done an amazing job and the college has done an amazing job on it.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm definitely very fortunate. The staff have been really responsive, especially during the first few days of or first few weeks of the pandemic. Everybody was working remotely and responding quickly and working even weekend hours to get these return to practice guidelines and bulletins done. But I also applaud the board for the executive getting together really quickly on a dime's drop, clinical practice committee pounding at document after document so quickly, and the board approving things so quickly. So I think well done to everybody. Thank you.
Great. Samir.
Fazal and team, it's commendable job. That is job well done. Definitely, you guys set an example to the other regulated colleges. As what Stephen said, as a registrant myself, I never felt that I don't have enough information from the college. So that is my point of view. I really thank you for the job that you did. It excellent.
Excellent. Thank you.
Great feedback. Ingrid and then Omar.
My comment was more on the document itself. I love this. We've gone a long way from the blackboard and checking off what we used to accomplish and not accomplish. This is perfect. Thank you.
I've got to put a lot of kudos to Melanie. That document, maintaining the thing has been a labor of love on her part. She has done an amazing job posting every little thing we do and collecting it back in that document. So she has made us look good there. So thank you, Melanie.
Great. Omar, anything to add?
While I would endorse the compliments shared by everyone to staff, I have a far-fetched question, so to speak. Fazal mentioned that these guidelines now will be translated into French language. I being on the PAR interview committee, I've noticed where foreign students has been struggling with the English language and expressing themselves, even though they have a strong knowledge of the profession. You know, and this is right across the border. You know, my far-fetched question is: would a time come, perhaps in the near future or sometime down the line, where it would be where it would necessitate the urgency or the need to translate in other popular language?
So Omar, thank you for that question. I think the college definitely embraces accessibility. That's been a huge word for us for several years. And so we're trying to get first French sort of nailed down as our additional official language. And then certainly we are trying to keep abreast of any requirements, translation requirements. We do on a one-off look at these things as well, whether an application comes in or requests for information. And we do seek out translation services from time to time. So definitely we want to nail down French for sure in all aspects. We've been slowly translating the website. Rather than just doing a little click on Google and translate, we've actually been getting professional translation services. But certainly if a patient or a registrant makes a request to us for an accommodation based on language or whatnot, we are very alive to it and extend best efforts.
Perfect. Any other thoughts or comments before we move on to the next section? Okay, so I'm hearing just widespread praise and kudos to the team in that area, and I'll pass it back to Fazal to go through the communications and support to the board policy report.
Okay, perfect. I'm just going to pull that up on my own computer as well. So again, this is similar in style. It's one of our new formats updated through governance as far as reporting out to the board. I'm just going to scroll down. So you've got all sort of the preamble. So what it essentially is it's similar to what you saw in your package at the last monitoring session. It speaks to the section in the policy, how the administration has interpreted it, and then on the far right is the evidence that we put forward to you as supporting executing of that task. So for instance, the very first one is about the CEO/administration providing the board with adequate information to support your decision making, including things like environmental scanning, staff and external perspectives, and any other factors that might weigh upon your decision making. So our interpretation of that policy that was put forward is that you're looking for environmental scanning tools and reports regularly at meetings and in between meetings, and that staff are weighing in with their perspectives when asked. So from our team, evidence to that effect are quantified on the right side. For instance, environmental scanning included the diversity, equity, and inclusion proposal presentation, the updates, the presentations that you've been receiving, such as like yesterday morning on the college performance measurements framework, the BC modernization initiatives. These are all examples of sort of the environmental scanning that we've been doing for you. It talks about the additional scanning that we do of other colleges when it comes to you exploring an issue that you're going to be creating a policy on. So again, like I said, in the far right column, we have sort of on the left, we have the policies that you put forward or approved at the board. On the right, we have sort of how we document support or execution of those policies. Things like if we scroll down further, the CEO will advise the board about media coverage, lawsuits, things like that. Legal updates are provided in camera so that you are aware of what's happening. In the registrar's report yesterday that you received, You were informed about the media coverage. We've also updated you via email about media coverage where it's been happening. So like I said, this report's in front of you. It basically tallies up sort of all the supporting things that the administration is doing to fulfill the policy put forward by the board. So again, it's been in your package, but I am available to take questions.
Questions, comments from the group on this piece?
I think Murray's got his hand up.
Murray?
As a newbie, I find this report excellent. Zal, I find it very informative, and it brought me up to date very quickly. I appreciate
Wonderful. Excellent. Thank you, Murray.
Great. Other thoughts, comments? Okay.
Perfect.
Super. Okay,
Catching
so
up on our agenda.
we are, absolutely. Just a reminder, we covered the registrar's report in the agenda yesterday in 4.0. So we will move on to 17.2 rather, with the summary of the reports. So Brian.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. So to use Murray's language, newbies, in most cases, what we do with these particular reports is pass them all at once on an omnibus motion. This by no means precludes or excludes discussion or questions that anybody would have on any of the committee reports. But for the sake of time, instead of doing them individually, this is what our practice has been in the last little while. So I'm going to, Sarah, you may want to ask if there are any questions before I ask for that motion.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will throw it out to the board if you do have questions or concerns before we go ahead with the motion. I see Fazal has his hand raised.
I was just going to say, like, typically the board's expected to read all the reports as Brian had outlined and ask questions as required. I might just point out, and maybe I can look to Dorina. We had put there's an NEC report in there, and it's I think it's relevant that maybe Dorina could inform the board of some high points going into the exams. Based on the pandemic, we've made some alterations to the registration exam to ensure safety and social distancing that will keep our applicants safe as well as our examiners. And I was thinking maybe, Dorina, you could touch on a couple of the, I think there's about 3 high points of alterations to the registration exam that maybe you could share with the board just to bring them to speed.
Yeah, Dorina, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Although I don't have the material in front of me, I can speak just off the top of my head. I wasn't sure I was going to put on the spot today with this, but that's fine. I think the main point of the committee discussion at the level of national committee examiners of the meeting that I participated on was maybe it was a controversy, really, because the results of maybe 20 years of exams that took place across Canada were actually statistically analyzed by a mathematician, and they came with a result stating that the exam is really a little bit more complex and more difficult to go through, rather than thinking, like I was thinking about the percentage that is now lowered. Like an optician would have a passing rate of 75%, and now the passing rate would be lower. And my question at the time of the meeting was, how can we accept this? Because we're basically lowering our bar. So I'm going to review. This is like backtracking now. So the statistician, the mathematician, demonstrated that they have withdrawn some of the questions and some of the parts of the exams that were actually aced by all the students throughout this length of time. And in fact, they were too easy to be kept in the exam. So, for example, the part that was to do with the practical aspect of insertion and removal of contact lenses, a skill that is necessary for an optician to have, was determined unnecessary given the circumstances of social distancing, and it was too risky for a model to be exposed to that, and also for the student to interact at such a short distance between a foreign person. So that part was taken off, and it was demonstrated in the discussion that it was way too easy for everybody. It was also determined that the passing rate of that part of the exam was very high throughout the time.
Dorina, sorry,
So I agree.
If I could just qualify that, I think it was deemed that it was probably unsafe for this exam session, and because it had a weighting that it was a high percentage of pass, by removing that section, it might affect negatively the candidates. So that's why the psychometrician re-engineered or re-weighted the exam without that portion. So I don't think they didn't remove it because it was too easy. It was removed because of the social distance.
No, it was proven to be a highly passed. It was passed at a very high rate throughout.
Yeah,
the
that's
time.
not in dispute, but that's not why it was removed.
It was removed because of the safety,
right?
But it was one of them to come up with this new format for the upcoming exams. Another part that was in discussion for long periods of time to be removed from the examination was determining the back curve of contact lens by using an instrument called radioscope, which is a piece of equipment very rarely used in our practices lately. And it's very difficult for any student to practice on this. And it was demonstrated as well as a little bit obsolete. So that was something that was eliminated from the exam. So this is in short what was my most eloquent observation. It was a really good explanation, as in why did they shape the new exams differently. And they have demonstrated that the exam is qualitative and quantitative acceptable for passing rate. And they are aligning the exam to newer competencies in the future. So that's my short overview, but they are now up and running, and a new session is available at the Seneca College, I think next week or so. And that's it.
Great. Thanks for that, Dorina. I see that Samir has his hand raised. Go ahead, Samir.
So just a question or a clarification more on this area. Reading this document, actually, when I got this package and I was reading through this document, and then I believe for the safety reason, this is basically, this changes are in fact for the fall examination for this year. And then committee will back, I think, reassess back in 2021. So they are kind of not totally dropped, but because of the safety precautions, they basically kind of were removed for the fall 2020 session, if I'm reading correctly.
Thanks for that clarification. I'm seeing Fazelle nodding. Did you just want to confirm?
Yeah, like it's COVID related, as I think Dorina might have mentioned in the report. There are some permanent changes that the NEC is going to look at as far as long-term goes. So there's two tracks. One is COVID related and one is long-term. So for instance, radioscope, while removed temporarily for the COVID exams, I'm going to call it, the NEC is going to look at permanently removing it possibly as an update to the exam permanently. But for instance, insertion removal of contact lenses has been removed for the pandemic-based sessions, but it's probably not up for grabs to remove that permanently. It's just that's one of those temporary ones. So the NEC is going to look at permanent and temporary changes, but as the report said, pupillometry has been adjusted so that it's not so close with the pupillometer. You're going to be using arm's length manual rulers. Insertion removal has been removed for the session, and radioscope has been removed for the session.
Great. Thank you. Okay, Mike, further question or comment?
Fazelle just answered all my questions. I was just
Okay.
wondering what was going to be removed permanently and what wasn't, and whether it's pandemic. So you answered them all. Thank you.
Perfect. Any other questions or comments on the reports before we move to a motion? Okay. Not seeing any there, Brian. So did you want to go ahead with a motion for the reports?
Yes, thank you, Sarah. So the motion will read to approve the committee reports, communication reports, and exam reports as presented. I need a
Steve.
mover. I see Steve. Seconder is Mike. All in favor? Unanimous.
That's unanimous. Super. Okay, so we are now going to move to the communications report. Oh, do we have the team there for the communications report?
I think
Yep,
Carolyn
sorry,
is
I'm
on
right
deck.
here.
Oh, there you go.
Yep, I'm just going to share my screen. Hold on.
Perfect.
Okay, there we are. I hope you all had a chance to read the communications report, and you've also heard a lot about the KPIs related to our communications from Fazelle this morning. So let's get started. So one of the most important things that we've been doing during the pandemic is keeping registrants updated as information becomes available from the Ministry of Health, from public health, or other reliable sources of information. Making this information available to registrants is a vital part of protecting the public. And so tools that we have been using to do this include a total of 20 COVID-19 updates by e-blast to our registrants, the COVID-19 page on our website, as well as regular updates on our social media. In looking at our Google Analytics, you can see that before we launched our new website, we really had two clear peaks in this graph, and this is specifically for hits on our COVID-19 page. So those two dates were March the 20th and March 24th. So now if we take a look at what we were doing on those 2 days, both of those peaks relate to an e-blast that we had sent out. So the first one on March 20th was an update from the Ministry of Health, ordering all healthcare providers to immediately cease all non-essential and elective services. And we had 522 visits to our COVID-19 page as a result of that e-blast. And so that was on the Friday. So then on March 24th, which was, I believe, the Monday, we sent a follow-up which included a reminder of the MOH directive and a list of businesses that were exempt from the mandatory closure. And that resulted in 938 visits to the COVID-19 page on our website. So after we launched our new site, which was on April 15th, I looked again at our Google Analytics and saw the same trend. So on April 22nd, we had 471 hits on our COVID-19 page. On May 16th, we had 643, and on the 27th, 829. So again, each one of these peaks in that graph that I showed you is related to an e-blast that we sent out. So on the 22nd, we sent out an update update number 10 on our essential service providers. So this launched the directory of opticians providing urgent or essential care, and included information about how opticians could add themselves to the list, which resulted in 741 visits to our COVID-19 page. And then on the 15th, we sent out COVID-19 update 14, which launched our return to practice guidelines and also included links to our FAQs, as well as a reminder to registrants that they were still under Directive 2. And as a result, we had 643 visits to our COVID-19 page. On the 27th, we sent out update number 15, which included information about the amended Directive 2, allowing registrants to gradually return to practice. So as a result of this, we had 829 visits to our COVID-19 page, and we also posted information about this on Instagram as well as Facebook and Twitter, and on Instagram had 43 likes, which is a lot for us. And then we also noted another trend that has occurred since February, which is in some cases almost a doubling of our social media followers on different sites. So it was interesting to see that trend. And I think this really points to the fact that our registrants are coming to us as a source of timely, relevant information, and we're sharing it with them. So there seems to be a level of engagement there that's growing, which is great to see. And then I just wanted to take you through some of the highlights quickly over the last couple months, so that if you're not following us on social media, you can see some of the things that we've been doing. So this post here, who is required to wear a mask in the dispensary, this got a lot of attention. As you can see, 191 engagements on Facebook. I think this really clarified something that registrants were unclear about. So people interacted with our post. For anyone who's not sure what an engagement is, it's in Facebook, it's anyone that has clicked on your post, anyone that has shared it, anyone on Twitter, it would be anyone who's retweeted it. And then just an update about our contact lens mentor policy. Again, that got a lot of interaction. And our return to practice guidelines, with 23 engagements on Facebook, 38 likes on Instagram, and 13 engagements on Twitter. We did something, we're trying some new things out. So we did get a significant response of 79 views on Instagram to this post, which was just a short video. We posted similar information on Facebook and on Twitter, but Instagram had 79 views. So I think that kind of stood out. And then we also did a series of posts in July about for UV Safety Month. And I thought that was kind of fun. So I wanted to just share that with you. And also letting our registrants know about our 2021 registration fee reduction. So that concludes my presentation, but I will pass it back to Sarah to see if anyone has any questions.
Great. Any comments or questions before we move to a motion on this one? Mike?
And Fazell, your staff, and Caroline, I think it's the email blasts that bring everybody back to our site, and I think you're going to see the numbers grow in the future for a great job you guys are doing. So thanks.
Thank you.
Perfect. Great. Thanks all. I don't see any other questions or comments. So in the interest of time, I'll move to Brian for a motion on this one.
Thanks, Sarah. So the motion, I think that I had said this before in the previous motion, maybe I made that my mistake, to approve the communications report as presented. I need a mover. Omar, seconder. Murray, all in favor? Unanimous.
Unanimous.
Thank you.
Super. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the meeting, and then I will pass to Brian to move us into the in-camera session.
Thank you, Sarah. So firstly, I'd like to thank the attendees and advise the appointed members on Zoom that we will now be concluding the public session. I thank Bezad, if he's still with us, for his presentations today. And I would therefore like to call for a motion to go into camera to proceed under section 7-2-D 13.2 of the regulation